I was standing in my kitchen in Scottsdale about 6 years ago. It was maybe 4 in the morning, and I was staring at the digital clock on the microwave like it was a judge delivering a sentence. I'd been awake for 2 hours. Again. My head felt like it was full of dry cotton. My joints had this dull, rusted ache, and there was this heavy, hollow feeling in my chest that I'd started to carry around like a second shadow. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, and I didn't see an executive who had closed million-dollar deals. I saw a man who was leaking. I was leaking energy. I was leaking focus. And worst of all, I was leaking that core sense of being a man that I'd always taken for granted. Most of us hit our 50s and 60s, and we start playing this game of guess the symptom. We wake up exhausted even after 8 hours in bed. We notice that the morning response, that physical signal that the engine is primed and ready, has become a rare event instead of a daily reality. We feel a little softer, a little more irritable, a little more distant from the people we love, and we tell ourselves the same lie every single morning. I guess this is just what happens now. This is just the tax for being 60. I told myself that lie for a long time. I told it to myself through a divorce that probably didn't have to happen if I'd been more present. I told it to myself while I sat in meetings trying to remember what the person across the table had said 30 seconds ago. But standing in that kitchen, I realized that if my body was a company I was running, I would have fired the CEO a year ago. The infrastructure was collapsing because I was ignoring the maintenance schedule. I thought I was just getting old, but the reality was that I was running on a deficit. I was missing one specific piece of the puzzle that was keeping the whole system from rebooting at night. See, we think of sleep as just turning off the lights. We think it's a passive state where nothing happens. But after I hit the wall and started really looking into how our internal machinery works, I realized that for a man over 50, nighttime is the most active shift in the factory. It's when the testosterone production peaks. It's when the blood vessels in your most sensitive areas go through a literal regeneration process. It's when your prostate settles down and the inflammation in your system gets flushed out. If you aren't reaching that deep restorative level of recovery, the factory stays dark. The repairs don't happen. And you wake up the next morning trying to run a high-performance life on yesterday's broken parts. I remember when I first started dating Alyssa. She's 9 years younger than me, and she's the kind of woman who notices everything. Early on, I was so focused on trying to look like I had it all together. I'd drink 3 cups of coffee before seeing her just to mask the fatigue. I'd make excuses about being stressed from work when things weren't clicking in the bedroom. I was terrified she'd see the man I saw in that kitchen window, the man who was running out of steam. One night, she just looked at me and said, "Cole, you're vibrating. You're lying here next to me, but your whole system feels like it's still in the office." She was right. My nervous system was stuck in high gear. I was falling asleep, but I wasn't recovering. I was stuck in that shallow, restless state where you hear every floorboard creak and you wake up feeling like you've been in a wrestling match. That was the moment I stopped looking for performance fixes and started looking for recovery fixes. And that's when I found the mineral that I now consider my nightly contract for staying vital. I'm talking about magnesium. But I'm not talking about the cheap stuff you find in a plastic bottle at the grocery store that just gives you an upset stomach. I'm talking about understanding the specific electrical grid of your body. Most men I know, men like us, who worked hard, who traveled, who carried the weight of a family or a business, are running on a massive magnesium deficit. We've burned through it like a car running at redline for 1,000 miles. Stress eats magnesium. Caffeine eats it. Alcohol eats it. And when it's gone, your calm down switch breaks. Your body stays in alert mode 24/7. You can't reach deep sleep because your nervous system thinks there's still a deal to close or a fire to put out. And when you don't reach that deep sleep, your testosterone production takes a 40% hit. Almost half of your drive gone just because you couldn't flip the switch. I started experimenting with different forms of it, and the change was almost eerie. I started with magnesium glycinate. I think of glycinate as the master regulator for the plumbing. It works directly on your parasympathetic nervous system, the part of you that's supposed to handle rest and digestion. Within about 4 nights of taking it before bed, I noticed that the vibration Alyssa talked about had stopped. My muscles didn't feel like they were under tension anymore. And more importantly, I noticed that my circulation was changing. See, magnesium helps your blood vessels relax and dilate. If those vessels are tight and constricted because you're stressed and deficient, blood can't flow where it needs to go. You can take all the blue pills in the world, but if the underlying pipes are too rigid to expand, you're just forcing pressure into a closed system. When I started taking glycinate about 45 minutes before bed, I wasn't just sleeping better. I was waking up with that morning signal I thought I'd lost forever. It was like the irrigation system in my yard out here in Scottsdale. Once you clear the line, the water flows to the roots, and the life comes back. Then I discovered magnesium threonate. This one is different. This is the one that crosses the blood-brain barrier. I think of this as the maintenance crew for the central processing unit. If you're over 60 and you find yourself lying in bed with your mind racing, replaying conversations, worrying about the kids, checking your mental to-do list, that's a brain that can't find the off button. Threonate found that button for me. The brain fog that I'd been living with for a decade started to lift. I started waking up with a level of clarity that I hadn't felt since my 30s. I wasn't irritable. I wasn't snapping at people for no reason. I was just steady. I realized that a lot of the grumpiness we attribute to old age is actually just the exhaustion of a man who hasn't had a real night's sleep in 20 years. We're tired, so we're short. We're short, so we push people away. We push people away, and we lose that connection that makes life worth living. It's a downward spiral that starts with a simple mineral deficiency. I made some mistakes early on, though. I'm an ex-sales guy, so my instinct is always more is better. I'd take it in the morning with my coffee, or I'd take the wrong dose and wonder why I felt sluggish at noon. I had to learn the protocol. You have to treat your body like a high-performance asset. You don't just throw parts at it. You follow the manual. The manual for me is simple now. About an hour before I plan to get into bed, I turn the lights down in the house. I put the phone away. Nothing kills your recovery faster than that blue light telling your brain it's high noon. And then I take my magnesium with a little warm water. I usually stack it with a bit of zinc and vitamin B6. Out here, we call that a ZMA stack. It's like a triple threat for male recovery. The zinc supports the actual production of the hormones, the B6 helps with absorption, and the magnesium handles the rest and the blood flow. I've had men reach out to me, guys I used to work with in the corporate world, and they'll say, "Cole, I tried it for 2 nights and I don't feel like a superhero yet." I always tell them the same thing. This isn't a blue pill. This isn't a quick fix that forces a result. This is about rebuilding the foundation. It's a maintenance contract. You don't see the results of a good maintenance schedule after 1 day. You see them after a month, after 6 months, after a year. But I'll tell you what I noticed. By the end of the first week, I was staying asleep for 6 hours straight. For a man my age, that's a win. By the end of the second week, the morning response was back and it was consistent. By the end of the month, my drive wasn't just something I had to summon. It was just there. It was part of my baseline again. I felt like the man I was supposed to be. I felt like I could walk into a room and actually hold the space instead of just hoping no one noticed how tired I was. I think about my son, Ethan. He's 31 and he's in that phase where he thinks he can survive on caffeine and 4 hours of sleep forever. I see him burning the candle at both ends and I see that same vibration in him that I had. I try to tell him, look, you're building a deficit you're going to have to pay back with interest later. He doesn't listen yet. He thinks strength is about how much you can push. But at 63, I know that real strength is about how well you can recover. If you're sitting there thinking that your best days are in the rearview mirror, I want you to reconsider the math. You aren't old. You're just unmaintained. You're running a system that's been starved of the basic tools it needs to reboot itself every night. When you fix the sleep, you fix the recovery. When you fix the recovery, you fix the hormones. And when you fix the hormones, the man comes back. I'm not saying this solves everything. Life is still complicated. Business still has its pressures. Relationships still take work. But it's a hell of a lot easier to do the work when you aren't exhausted. It's a hell of a lot easier to be the man Alyssa deserves when I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. feeling like a failure. I want you to try this. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy who was willing to stop lying to himself. Go find a high-quality magnesium glycinate. Start with about 200 milligrams before bed. Don't expect a miracle overnight. Just pay attention. Pay attention to how heavy your eyelids feel about an hour after you take it. Pay attention to how your legs don't feel as restless. Pay attention to that first moment you wake up in the morning. A lot of men wait until they have a major health scare to start paying attention to these things. They wait for the heart to skip a beat or for the relationship to finally snap. I waited too long myself. I waited until I was divorced and alone in a kitchen in Scottsdale before I decided to get serious about my own infrastructure. You don't have to wait for the collapse. You can start the maintenance today. Confidence isn't something you can fake. It's a byproduct of a body that's working correctly. When you know your system is backed up by a solid recovery plan, you walk differently. You talk differently. You look at your partner differently. It's the difference between being a man who's just trying to get through the day and a man who's actually living it. I look at the men around me here in Scottsdale, guys at the club or at the gym, and I can tell within 10 seconds who's recovering and who's just pushing. The guys who are just pushing have that gray look in their skin. They have that forced, loud energy. The guys who are recovering, they have this quiet, steady presence. They're calm. They're alert. They're vital. I know which one I want to be. This one nightly habit changed the trajectory of my 60s. It took me from a man who was quietly surrendering to a man who is actively building a future. It's a small thing. A pill, some warm water, and a dark room. But in the long run, the small things are the only things that matter. They are the contracts we sign with our future selves. I'm glad we're having this conversation because for too long, men our age have been told that we just have to accept the decline. We've been told that potency and vigor are for the young. I'm telling you that's a lie designed to sell you things you don't need. What you need is to give your body the basic materials to do what it was already designed to do. So tonight when you're winding down, I want you to think about that factory. I want you to think about the off switch, and I want you to decide that you're done running on a deficit. You've worked too hard and you've come too far to spend the rest of your life feeling like a ghost of the man you used to be. You're still here. The engine is still there. It just needs the right spark to fire again. I'll be here, keeping the routine, doing the work. I hope you'll join me. There's a lot of road left to travel, and I plan on seeing every mile of it with my eyes wide open and my system running at full capacity. I'll talk to you soon.